Hey, for Sunday, November 1st, 2020, this is the Pro and Con Show, and I'm your host, Michael James Ott. As always, welcome to the show. So, purpose of the show, please, let's all be better citizens. Pro and con, good and bad, for and against, pro and con. Hence, the Pro and Con Show. The issues that face us, they cannot be summarized in 4 words on a hat or a bumper sticker. Okay, those 4 words on a hat or a bumper sticker, that's called propaganda. What they've done is the people who run our 2 political parties have, simplified, labeled us and so on, simplified the issues so that we can, merrily stand, apparently, and we enjoy this, apparently, standing on either side of the street, screaming at each other, when the reality is that the vast majority of us would rather and could easily stand in the middle of the street together and resolve our issues. But the political parties and these mastermind people, wealthy, influential people who want this, okay? They want their tribe. They want a certain sizable part of our populace that automatically follows whatever they want. They just direct them. This is and how do they do that? By using hot button emotional things like gun violence and abortion and climate control or climate change, and just the rhetoric and the propaganda around this. They use it to control us, to put us basically into 2 camps, and then they fight at the fringes. Just like this is just like a civil war, only it's like a cold civil war. And I said in a previous show, it's very similar to the Cold War between the United States and the Soviet Union. If you remember that, hopefully most of you are old enough to remember, we had this Cold War, okay, where these 2 sides, 2 dominant sides fighting, okay, but mostly with rhetoric and propaganda and stuff like that, and only on the fringes was there actual violence. And this is exactly what we see in the United States of America. We have these 2 groups, Democrats and Republicans, fighting, mostly with rhetoric and propaganda, and now there's the violence, just little bits of violence around the edge, kind of little test cases where it's actually physical violence. Anyway, so today's show is called Election Update. So it's the last election update that I'm going to provide in the show. So it's November 1st. There's just a couple of days until the election. And so where are we? Well, if you read the Real Clear Politics or 538, those websites, they do, I think, a great job of compiling information. The 538 folks, they go through a bunch of analysis where they supposedly simulate the election. I don't know how you could possibly do that. But the general gist of it at this point is that Mr. Trump remains amazingly popular. In my view, he remains amazingly popular given the pandemic and the economic fallout from the pandemic, and his personality, which again, I personally I don't get how people like him, but there's people that do, and I see it, I understand it. He's a very entertaining individual. I've talked about this in the past shows. He's an entertaining individual in that he stands there and he just talks, and and he makes jokes all the time, and he doesn't care. He's like a stand-up comedian. For the audience that he's before, he's like a stand-up comedian. He just talks and he says all kinds of stuff, and he knows how to work a room, basically, and amazingly, and I said this in a previous show, he is a great politician, a phenomenal politician. Phenomenal. And it's amazing that the people that follow him believe that he's not a politician, but he is the consummate politician. He is the best politician we've probably ever had in the last 50 years in this country. Why? Because he understands whoever he's in front of. He tells them exactly what they want to hear, so he can read the room. He tells them what they want to hear. And then he's fortunate because, again, because of the political parties, and the Republican Party has decided, okay, this is how we're going to have power and influence. Donald Trump is going to be our megaphone, and he's going to help, keep his tribe, keep his cult in control. And we're going to give him money, and we're going to give him other sources to amplify his message. For example, Fox News and Breitbart and a handful of others. This is what they've done. And so that's where we are, is that Donald Trump is amazingly popular, given all the things that he's done. To me, it's pretty clear. Clearly, he's done a lot of pretty darn corrupt things. He's been impeached, but not convicted, but impeached. And yet he remains amazingly popular. Now, having said that, the polls also suggest that he's going to lose on November 3rd, or actually the week of November 3rd, because of all of the coronavirus things and the different voting methods, mail-in votes, early voting, day of voting. In fact, that all these end up in paper ballots, and then those things all have to get counted. And the different states have different regulations on when they can count them and who can count them and all this other stuff. So it's going to mean that this election is going to drag out. My personal opinion is it's going to drag out for 3 or 4 days, kind of thing. So, the actual supposed election date is November 3rd. That's kind of when the voting is going to end. Okay, that's when the voting is going to end. But then the Wednesday, the Thursday, maybe even the Friday, maybe even into the following Monday. But I'm personally thinking it's either going to be Thursday or Friday, and enough of the votes will have been tallied that probably a winner will be declared, and that winner will probably be Mr. Biden, according to the best information that anyone has. But certainly Mr. Trump could and can win again. And 538 says he has about a 1 in 10 chance. Maybe it's 1 in 4. But anyway, so we're going to go vote, and we're going to see step by step how this goes. The other thing that bothers me is that again, the election system, there's this expectation that the popular vote in the various states is going to then drive the delegate count from those states, and then that in turn is going to drive the electoral college vote, which in turn would cause the president to be elected. But in many states, that is just the way it's been. The law doesn't say anything. That's the amazing thing, is in so much, and the one thing that Mr. Trump has clearly shown a bright, brilliant spotlight on is many of the things that you and I, as average Americans, took for granted, must be documented, must be law. He has come in and shown, put a brilliant, bright spotlight on so many things that actually were not law. They were just norms. Okay? And going back to the election, there are a handful of states where, for example, the legislatures in those states are controlled by, both houses of legislatures in those states are controlled by the Republican Party, for example. And there's nothing that would preclude those states from basically claiming that the vote in the state is fraudulent, and that the legislatures could then vote amongst themselves, again, in this particular instance, let's say controlled by Republicans, could vote to replace or not send the delegates that would be based on the popular vote, but only on the vote of the legislation or the legislators in that state. So, for example, my state of Wisconsin is one of these states. And in the state of Wisconsin, if President Trump, for example, loses the popular vote, then in theory, the norm would be that the electoral votes from the state of Wisconsin would go to Mr. Biden, because Mr. Trump lost, Mr. Biden won, the votes, the electoral college votes would go to Mr. Biden. But the state of Wisconsin, both houses of the legislature are pretty strongly Republican. And so if they decided, and they could do this in the lame duck section, they can, even though maybe even many of them were voted out, doesn't matter, they're still in office. They could meet, decide to declare the election in the popular election in Wisconsin fraudulent, and declare that the electoral votes from Wisconsin would go to Mr. Trump instead of Mr. Biden. And the amazing thing is that they are having regular discussions about this, and the Biden or the Trump campaign staff, they have lawyers and stuff like that realize that there's basically these loopholes in the law. Mr. Trump being the master of the loophole, there are these loopholes in law, and let's explore this. Let's do it. Why not? And the amazing thing is, there's no law to stop it. And the Constitution is silent on how elections occur, so the Supreme Court would just go, and you'd have a vote where the liberal folks on the Supreme Court would say, hey, come on, the three liberal justices on the Supreme Court would say, come on, the intent of the Constitution is of the people, by the people, for the people. So when the people vote, come on, the electoral college has to go for those people. But the others, who are, many of them appointed by Mr. Trump, would just go, the state decided that that's how they're going to do it. So there you go. Seemed like there was one last thing. Oh, and then the other thing that's been talked about, and certainly will happen because Mr. Trump is who he is he's going to, regardless of the outcome on November 3rd or November 4th or November 5th, the entire time Mr. Trump is going to be declaring that he won. He will do this. And it's just a matter of when on November 3rd or in the wee hours of November 4th, when is he going to first declare that he won? And then what else is he going to do? Supreme Court challenges, who knows? It's just going to, but you can bet on the one thing Mr. Trump is, and I've said this many times in past shows, his superpower is tenacity. And he wants to remain president of the United States for many reasons. We've talked about them in the past. And so the first thing he will do, no matter what the outcome is, he's going to declare victory. He's going to declare victory, period. And then he's going to do whatever is within his purview, whatever he can, to stay in power to ensure that that victory occurs. So Supreme Court challenges, encouraging states to throw out the electoral vote and redo it in their legislatures, like I just talked about the state of Wisconsin. Whatever he can do, step by step, you can be damned sure that this is going to happen. And that's the final election update for this year. It's going to be probably, I guess, pretty darn close. And you can bet that Mr. Trump is, I would say the probability at this point is he's going to lose by normal standards, but he's going to declare that he won, and then he's going to fight tooth and nail with every possible asset that he has to keep the presidency. And we'll just see what happens. It's going to be a very, very, very anxious time, a very, I don't know, angry time. It's going to get bad. For the Pro and Con Show, I'm your host, Michael James Ott, and until the next show, there's only 2 left. Until the next show, bye for now.